think we're all set. I think we're live. All right. Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. With us today, we have Major League Fishing pro Josh Bertrand. How are we doing today, sir?
What's the good word, man? Happy to be here.
We're doing well, doing well. How we start every podcast, like I just mentioned a little bit to you earlier when we're offline, is I want to hear your whole story on how you got into fishing, who got you into it, and how it kind of drove that passion to be where you are now fishing professionally.
Yeah, sure. So, I live in Arizona now, but I'm actually from the Northeast like you. I'm originally from New Hampshire. So, we had moved out here when I was about 8 years old, but my, earliest fishing memories are from up there, trout fishing, stuff like that. We moved down here to Arizona, my family, and we've got some mountain lakes and stuff like that, but for the most part, we're down in the desert. So it's all warm water species, largemouth, smallmouth, bluegill, catfish, crappie, stuff like that. So I just kind of fell in love with bass fishing. I would get out with my dad every weekend, more or less. We had a little aluminum boat. I'd fish with my dad and brother throughout the whole year down here. We had very minimal success in the beginning. We had a lot of, we struggled a lot, but, we still loved it. We'd go out and we'd blank 2 out of 3 times, but that third time we'd catch a fish, we'd get stoked and it would keep us coming back. And then in the summers, I'd go back and visit family and my grandparents in New Hampshire. I'd fish with my grandpa every night. He'd get off work and then we'd go fish for bass on this little lake that my grandparents lived on. So kind of a mix of that, man. I guess I was lucky like early on because I was exposed to Western, like clear water fishing, but also, some of that Northeastern fishing where, the fish are less pressured up there. So they were honestly a little easier to catch on those lakes in New Hampshire than they are down here on these lakes. So I kind of did a little bit of both, and I got into tournament fishing when I was 12 or 13 years old. I started, I had, just through going to the lake every weekend, I had met a couple guys that fished tournaments out here that were cool mentors for me, and they would take me fishing. They taught me a lot, but they also, brought me to some tournaments with them. And man, I got totally bitten by that bug. I was into sports, so I was competitive, and fishing was like that perfect. The tournaments were like the perfect combination of, you get that competitive drive out of your system, but also do what you loved in fishing. So that's, where I started out on the tournament side. When I was like 16, I was fishing, federation level tournaments, team tournaments, stuff like that. Had a couple more good tournament partners out here and started, having a little bit more success in the tournaments, winning some local tournaments. And dude, I was all about it. The last couple of years of high school, I was probably a little too into the fishing side and not enough on the school side. But, I missed a lot of Fridays, snuck out and fished on Fridays a lot to free fish for tournaments. And I don't know if it was good or bad, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But all I wanted to do was fish. I started fishing like regional tournaments and stuff when I was about 18. Out here, there's a circuit called One Bass. It's like a regional pro circuit. FLW had some Western tournaments that I was entering into, and did those for a couple years. I was guiding full time at that point. I went to college for a couple years, and again had the really bright idea that fishing was more important than school. So I pulled out of college and started fishing. And college fishing wasn't such a big deal back then. I'm 31 now, so college fishing was just starting out.
Yeah.
And, if I could go back again, I would have gone to a school with a fishing team and taken advantage of that, tried to get a degree, fished on a team. But, I took a little bit different path. I, just went fishing basically. And at 20 years old, I fished my first season of the Bassmaster Opens. Didn't do very well. I kind of was doing well at home, and I thought, I kind of had stuff figured out, just like a lot of 20-year-olds would. And went out there and got my butt kicked. I did not have a good first season on the Opens, so I came back here. I took a year off, went back when I was 22, and things went a lot better for me. I finished first in points in the Central Opens and qualified for the elites. So I fished and one tournament in particular. There was a big springboard for me. At Lake Lewisville in Texas, I ended up tied for first with Brent Chapman after competition was over. And there have been only a few fish offs in history. in that organization, and
Yeah.
we had a fish off, and I lost in the fish off the next day. But it was cool because I got a little bit of attention out of it from
Yeah.
just different media places. And then I met up with Brent, and he actually since that point became kind of a mentor for me, which was really cool. And he still is. He's a great friend, a great mentor. I can always go to him when I have questions about the industry or about fishing. So, I guess probably the biggest thing there was actually just meeting Brent and getting close to him. But anyways, made the elites, and that's kind of when that started. I fished over there for 6 years. Moved over to Major League Fishing last year, and I'm going into my second season with Major League Fishing now. So,
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I mean, only 2 years in the opens, and then you head in full head of steam into the elites. That's pretty impressive. It usually takes guys like way more than 2 years at least.
Well, and sometimes it's hard to call it blind luck, and it wasn't straight blind luck. But I was at a point where I literally didn't know any better. Like I just thought, this isn't that. Like I thought it was easy. Like not easy, but I didn't realize how hard it actually was fishing back east. And I was so green. I just confidence pushed me through the whole thing. You know what I mean? Through that whole season, I was just fishing off confidence, not off of knowledge, and it worked out. And so actually, as I was going through the Elite Series over the next several years, I was still very inexperienced compared to the guys I was fishing against. And, there were every lake we went to was my first time to that body of water. There was a lot of different styles of fishing that I wasn't at least comfortable with, fishing tides, fishing different types of grass, stuff like that. So it's been a learning curve the entire journey so far.
Oh, I bet. And I'm sure fishing certain seasons, obviously early season and spring for bass or MLF is probably entirely different than back where you're used to in Arizona.
Totally, dude. That's a really good point. Yeah, we never fished. The coldest water that we ever get here in Arizona is like maybe 52. I was fishing 52-degree water the other day. And when you get dropped on a body of water, the first classic I ever fished was at Gunnersville and in like early February 2014, and the water was like 42 when practice started. It was the coldest water I've ever seen, and I'm fishing the biggest tournament of my life. So it was definitely a shock, man, for sure.
Oh yeah. Just the other day, I was out on Cuca Lake up here, as I mentioned earlier. I'm in the heart of the Finger Lakes. I was out on my kayak in Cuca Lake, and it was 38-degree water, and we were catching smallmouth and Lakers. So it was.
I'm amazed. I'm very impressed that you're in December fishing in upstate New York out of a kayak. I'm amazed.
Well, one of my buddies, it was Christmas Eve, and he, on his Instagram story, has not a picture, but a video of him releasing a smallmouth from his boat. And I see he has a jacket on. I'm like, oh, is that like from November or something earlier in the fall? He goes, no, this is this morning. And I'm like, what do you mean this morning? It's December. It's Christmas Eve. And he goes, yeah, Cuca Lake is open because a lot of the other Finger Lakes around us are pretty much starting to freeze or half frozen already. And I'm like, you're meaning it's entirely open, like you can launch, you're perfectly fine to go on it. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I was catching a bunch of them today. I'm like, you joke? Okay. So I texted my buddies who I usually fish with. We do it's part of KBF, so New York's KBF version, kayak bass fishing.
Uh-huh.
I have a bunch of buddies that fish that, and we're all like, all right, let's go out on Cuca and like try our hand at some of them. I ended up losing like a 5-pound smallmouth, and then got distracted catching Lakers and 40 to 60 foot on blade baits. So we had ourselves a day, but
that's awesome, man.
They're still whacking them up here in New York if you can get on some open water. But this week's gonna be all 20s, so it's gonna be ice season here soon. But.
Yeah, props to you guys. I would have figured it'd be frozen over. I actually fished Cuca Lake one day, probably 4 or 5 years ago. Cool little lake, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with. I always butcher his last name, but Fred Rumbanis.
Oh yeah.
His swim bait video is actually that was on Cuca Lake where he went through showcasing his swim bait line that he had come out with. Uh-huh. This is when it was still fresh, and he was skipping docks on Cuca Lake in New York with that, catching 6-pounders off of it.
I've heard it's got some toads in it. I really have, yeah.
Cuca, Cayuga. If you come up in a couple months for Cayuga, there's dirty 30s that were caught last spring. Like they had it's called Rochester Bassmasters up here in New York, and they'll do some early tournaments before season starts. So obviously you can't keep anything alive well with regulations and whatnot.
Sure.
So they did what was like an MLF style where you release and you weigh
Nice.
in
Right
in
on.
your
Better than
boat.
a paper tournament. That's cool, man.
Yeah, yeah, and they would still do your best five. So they would have like your best five, like your total weight for your best five fish, but obviously you're still within the guidelines if you're releasing them. And then for fun, they kind of kept like their total tally, but they only scored your best five. And
Uh-huh.
it took 31 pounds to win out on Cayuga in the spring. New York is very underrated for that's why a lot of the
Great.
anglers talk about how much they love coming up here.
It's
It's
the best.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It is.
So kind of transitioning into 2020 is what do you look like? What are your goals? I guess obviously probably to win an MLF, but beyond just a champ, like to win a tournament or a championship. What are your goals for 2020 moving forward?
It's funny, we were talking about that today, man, and everyone's the year just flipped over January 3rd now, so it's time to like try to make some goals and look forward to the season. And ultimately, like for me, like forever, it's always been just every day on the water to try to maximize it, catch as many big fish as you possibly can on a given day. And if you do that, you're going to be really, really good, and if you don't, then you won't. But overall, on a tournament standpoint, yeah, winning a tournament, having a couple top tens, that's what takes you a long way, on your career side. But on a personal side, I want to become more organized, man. And,
Okay.
for me, coming from Arizona to all these different tournaments all over the country, I don't get to drive home and reset every time because it's so far that, I have to put everything in my truck and boat and go and try to just, adapt as the season moves along. So if we're on a clear spotted bass lake, then we go fish a dirty water largemouth lake with grass or without grass. Then we go to a grass lake. Then we go up north to a smallmouth lake. Every single one of those tournaments is like a whole boat full of separate tackle, all different rods, and by the end of the season, it's a disaster for me. I've got what I need in the boat when the tournaments are going on, but it's ugly, and my truck just looks like an absolute just a joke, man. So just a clown show. I'm going to try to become more organized this year, and to be honest, I'm not off to a good start. I've got a couple young kids, and I've got a lot going on. So it's going to be, and I've got like 3 weeks before I leave town. I'm going to be out of town for one of those weeks, and just a lot to do. I'm still trying to rig a boat. I got to get that thing broken in. So wish me luck, man, because I need it
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah, I mean, the more organized you are, typically in your mind, you're more organized. You're gonna be a little bit more efficient because you're gonna be wasting less time looking for stuff
Oh yeah.
and know where things are. But in recent, would you say you're more of or are you striving, I guess, towards a Brian Thrift boat deck or like a David Dudley where it's organized chaos?
I've always been the guy that has a lot of rods on the deck, man. Uh, I'd much rather have it out and rigged up than have to dig it out of a rod locker. So
Yeah.
even if I'm going into a day thinking I might maybe just do one or two things, I'll still have 13, 14 rods on the deck. Um, but it starts off looking good, but it's not by the end of the day. It's amazing how Thrift at the end of the day, his rods are still perfectly stacked up.
Yeah.
And, he just pulls them out like weapons one at a time, I do too, but yeah, when I'm pulling them out, I'm like like untangling them from each other, and but they're on the deck anyways, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of curious, like not really. It's interesting to watch some of the different live series and see what different anglers do with their setup, and how they kind of interact when situations pop up. Like I'm sure one of the reasons why guys have so many rods on their deck is where you never know when a random like thing is going to pop up, like bait. They start pushing bait at one section where you don't think it's ever going to happen.
Exactly,
That's
dude.
why
Yep.
you're prepared for it. It's kind of interesting to see how certain anglers kind of rig their setups to appease the one guy has bait casters on the left and spinning on the right kind of thing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, to each his own on that one. I don't, and I definitely, I'll start the day out like that sometimes. I'll maybe have my reaction rods on one side and my slow fishing rods on the other side. That way, I'm just going to one side depending on what I'm trying to do. But yeah, by the end of the day, dude, it's out the window for sure. Yeah, it just is. But I love to have two. If I know I'm going to be doing something a lot, even something simple like throwing a shaky head, I love to have two of them out, especially spinning rods when you're going to be tying leaders. In Major League Fishing, every 2.5 hours we have a break. So
Yeah.
if you can get through like if there's 15 minutes left in a period and you break off your spinning rod with a leader, and this is no different than a normal tournament. If it's 15 minutes left in the day and you've got one shaky head rod and that's what you're doing all day long, you break that thing off, man. That's 5 minutes eating out of your day retying that thing. So I love to have two. When I go up your way and I'm smallmouth fishing, and there's tournaments where I've gone in knowing I'm going to do nothing but drop shot, and I'll have 4 drop shot rods, all exactly the same. Because what if you're on the St. Lawrence River and you've got the perfect drift going and you break off, you just whip out another one and drop back down, or you catch a fish, you're on Champlain and you drop down and catch it, and he mangles up your drop shot. But you saw when you caught the one, 7 more arches came up off the bottom. You just unbuckle the other one and send it down and catch another fish.
Oh yeah, I've had that many times. I mean, especially from a kayak standpoint, we have very little room, I guess, to really kind of mess around, because a lot of our storage is behind us. So I've had it happen multiple times where I caught a smallmouth during a tournament and I've seen 3 or 4 with him, and it takes me forever because I try to take as little stuff as I can. I mean, I still bring a lot for a kayak, but at the same time, like, I only try to have like 1 or 2 of each setup. So like, whereas a boat deck where you can afford to do that stuff, 3 or 4 rods, for me it's something that you have to work at with, scrambling, and sometimes you miss out on it. But that's the downside of being in a kayak. But I'm curious with MLF, because you have the different periods. Do you find that throughout each period, like from a morning period to one of the an afternoon, that your deck looks a little different than when you first started out?
Yeah, and you brought up a good point with the kayak thing, and I can't speak too much to that. So, and I'm not even going to try to, because I don't want to say the wrong thing on that, because I just don't know any better on how to be efficient with that layout, But yeah, from like a period standpoint, yeah, for sure. You definitely, you learn as the day goes on, right? And those are 15 minutes where you're not allowed to fish, and it only takes 2 minutes to eat a sandwich, right? Like, so you're just going to get a little nourishment, drink some water, and then you retie everything you can. And you just get reorganized. Yeah, absolutely. You're resetting the day 3 times, or 2 times, I should say. So it's cool as far as that goes. And there have been a lot of times where you're just like, I don't have enough time to retie that thing right now. I'll do it when the period ends. So it's nice for that. And sometimes, you're sitting there in the back of a creek. You've been fishing shallow all morning, and it's like, okay, well, I've about worn this out. I'm about to go deep. So you'll reach in and grab a couple of deep crankbaits, a Carolina rig, and a drop shot out of your rod locker, and your deck was maybe flipping sticks and frogs in the morning, and then the afternoon it's offshore structure stuff. So it's an opportunity to definitely change it up.
And do you kind of organize, I guess, in your strategy? Do you like try to do different things in different periods depending on what's worked in practice, or is it kind of just trying to hit different things during each period?
It's all going by feel, right? So like if it's early in the tournament, you're just trying to catch as much as you possibly can. You're starting off with what you learn in practice, but you're totally going by feel, and sometimes things aren't the way you expected them to be in practice. Sometimes you wear something out faster than you expected. So you definitely have to be rolling with the punches. And then sometimes the score tracker's maybe not doing what you expected to, right? So like if you're on a deal that you thought was pretty decent and you get out there and you're catching them at a certain pace like you expected to be, but you're in 20th place, it's like, this isn't quite good enough. I need to be expanding a little bit. And it's the same with any tournament, whether it's Major League Fishing or not, man. I mean, if especially a 1-day tournament, if it's going to take 20 pounds to win, and in practice you think you've only got something that you can go catch 12 pounds on, in my opinion, you're almost better off just wiping the sheet clean and just going from scratch than going to catch 12 pounds. It's not going to be any good. So it's the same thing with Major League Fishing. You can't keep up. There's no sense in burying yourself in a deeper hole. You probably want to keep moving, do something different.
Yeah, that's interesting. And a big question I was just curious with, because for me, I kind of bounce back and forth on it. Just me as like mentally. When you have your breaks between your periods, is it more of is it refreshing for you? So a time for you to kind of relax from going hard from that period. Is it time for you to kind of relax, or is it almost like you're sitting there like you have a chance, like you're missing out on time to get bites? Like
Yeah,
I feel like for me, like I feel relaxed for 5 minutes, and then that rest at 10 minutes, and be like, all right, they're biting right now, and I'm not allowed to fish.
exactly. And you're really, I think, you're spot on with that one, because you need that time to retie, so you're thankful to have that. But once you get retied and have a couple bites of protein bar or sandwich or something like that, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. But, it's an opportunity to look over your maps. Like if you're struggling, you can sit in front of your GPS and try to come up with a game plan on how you're going to attack this next period. You don't take that time when the clock's ticking. You've got to be fishing. So it's an opportunity to sit there and look at the map and think. But yeah, half the time, man, you're ready to go, and you're just like, come on, like let's go. I'm dying here. It's weird to be sitting on your boat, completely ready to go, ready to fish, but still just have to wait.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happens a lot, like, and at takeoff too. We get X amount of time at takeoff to, get out and get to our spot, but the score tracker starts at the same time. So you might have if I'm running 25 miles and the next guy's running 2 miles, the guy that ran 2 miles is going to sit there and wait. And I've done this a few times too, where I run a mile and I sit there for 25 minutes twiddling my thumbs. And dude, at the beginning of the day, when you're fired up and ready to go,
Oh yeah.
takeoff run, to not be able to pick up a rod and cast is hard, for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was, but somebody was like doing jumping jacks or something on the front of their boat to try to keep their mind at
Yeah,
ease because they were just
probably
going
Aaron
too
Martin.
excited. So it was probably. I mean, that guy's if he's not fishing, it seems like he's running 10Ks.
Yeah,
But I think the periods actually would like, especially if you're having a bad day, like a rough day mentally. I feel like it's perfect time for you to sit down and kind of regather your brain and not have to worry about other guys catching fish. Where it kind of forces you to put a
exactly.
rod down and kind of just say, take a break, take a step back, and say, all right, how can I, get back to it? It's like kind of, it's a while ago, but like Mike says, when he's not having a good day, he stops, takes a breath, go back to the basics. Where if you don't have those periods, you're kind of forced to just keep fishing and keep fishing. You don't have that time to really slow down and regather your brain.
I'm with you 100%, man. It's very cool for that. So, and it's a lesson too, because obviously not everyone fishes that format. So, if you're fishing a local tournament, it's worth, just like you're saying, Ike and Ellie says, man. I mean, it's worth burning up. It's worth burning up 5 minutes. It's way better to do that than to burn up your entire day because you never had that minute to reset and get your head in the right place. So, I mean, yeah, it's probably a good idea if you're starting to spin out. Take a seat and slow things down a little bit. If you don't have to retie anyways. Just do something
Yep.
to stop and think,
Yep. Definitely. Something to distract yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But so obviously beyond obviously format changes, but coming from Bassmasters, would you say that yourself like your style of fishing has changed at all coming into MLF, or do you think you're still kind of the same fisherman you were growing up?
It kind of, it depends on the tournament, just like everything, every answer I give. It depends on this, depends on this. But overall, man, not really. And that might be surprising to some. There are a few tournaments like towards the later half of the season, we went to Table Rock, and Table Rock's a lake that has a zillion spotted bass. And in a normal tournament that had a 5 fish limit, I've been there. I fished plenty of tournaments with the 5 fish limit. I would have left the spots alone and fished for big largemouth. That one, in that style, every fish counts. You run the table with spotted bass. So I fished differently in that tournament. But I think out of all the tournaments, man, that was probably the only one. And we went there twice. But the 6 out of the 8 other tournaments, I used the same baits, probably the same techniques and stuff I would have used in a normal tournament. And if I look back at the actual weights that I caught, it probably would have been comparable if you would have kept the biggest 5 separated. But a lot of the same baits. We have one less day of practice, so that changes the way you do things a little bit. I mean, 2.5 days was short already over at Bass. Now it's 1.5 days, so that's very limited time to break down a big body of water that you maybe don't know. But I mean, man, it's a lot of the same baits, and you're just, no matter what, you're looking for bites. I mean, you get dropped on a 100,000-acre body of water that you've never been to, or you've been to once 5 years ago or something. You don't have the luxury in most cases, even in a 5 fish limit tournament, to know it so well that you can instantly target 5-pound fish. You've got to figure out how to get bites first. Then once you figure out how to get bites, you learn, okay, well, this is the forage that I'm finding over here. This is the quality of fish I'm finding. These fish over here are eating shad and they're a little smaller. These fish over here are eating bluegill. They're a little bit better quality. Let me see if I can duplicate this bluegill deal. And you go and expand from there. But this is really no different. You start out looking for bites, and you go from there, man. It evolves from that. But you got to figure out how to catch fish, no matter what style the tournament is first.
Yeah, I've always been really intrigued with how each angler, in their own way, kind of changes their strategy and their preparations when it comes to fishing all over the nation, how they adjust their style and their tactics. It's something I've always kind of nerded out on.
Sure, me too.
How the brain works and mentally kind of going into a tournament, how different anglers think and prepare. But kind of aside from that, one of the questions I kind of had for you, traveling, obviously from the spring until early fall, you're very busy with tournaments and preparation. I'm sure you have a bunch of sponsor things going on. How challenging is it to try to keep up with family and be connected with everything while also being successful in the tournament scene?
It's a little bit of a challenge. Like any job, you're going to have different obstacles and stuff like that. And of course, the time away, like as a bass fisherman, is the number one thing. If you can't have your family with you, which like in my case, my kids are so young, it's just tough. I live so far away. For me, it's easier what I do is I generally will drive to the tournament and fish, and then I'll leave my rig right somewhere near where the tournament ended, fly home, fly back, and then fish the next tournament, drive to it, fish it, do the same thing. So I fly in between tournaments. It saves me a little bit of money, and it saves me. I mean, man, it would cost me more money too to drive my truck back and forth from Arizona every time with gas. So I try to fly to just get as much time at home as possible. And I'm on FaceTime every night with my wife and kids, and there's no doubt that it's tough, but you just try to find that balance, man. And it's one of those sports too where the harder you hustle, a lot of times the better you're going to do on both the sponsorship front and on the water, right? So if you're spending a lot of time on the water, you're tuned in. And I'm the type of guy I do better when I'm fishing a lot of tournaments. I mean, if I look back at the years that I've fished, I've picked up and fished FLW like coasted tournaments in between Elite Series tournaments, or Open Bassmaster Open in between elites. And now same thing, picking up FLW Series tournaments, fishing the U.S. Open. I do better just because I'm on the water and I'm always at least a little fresher, not so rusty. So, and it's not like I am a better mechanical caster when I'm fishing all the time necessarily, but I think I'm thinking a little bit clearer. Yeah. So I try to fish as much as possible. Got it. I take care of the family. That's the number one thing. And then, just try to be hustling for sponsors any chance you get. The biggest thing you can do is just be staying in touch with them and trying to find opportunities to, when you do have time, trying to find opportunities to help.
Yeah, definitely. Do you, and you're kind of, because you've been in the scene for a while now, because obviously a lot of the tournament scene is very heavily on if you split the nation in half, it's very east, with tournaments and where they are. Obviously in the past, like tournaments have gone to like California and things. And obviously they've come to Arizona. Do you see that in the future of tournaments, like especially MLF, going to California to like a Clear Lake or something like that?
I do for sure, man. And I don't, there's no way to know. I say I do.
Yeah,
for sure.
obviously,
I think so for sure.
Yeah.
And I could see it in the next year or two. They can't do it every year. And I think a big thing is for a lot of the guys that are traveling from back east, they're just not used to it. They don't want to come out here for one tournament. So hopefully within the next 2 years, the schedule's built up perfectly where maybe they can do 2 in a row. Maybe we'll do one on Havasu and then up at Clear Lake, or Havasu and California Delta or something like that. That would be sweet. The anglers love to fish out west because it's good fishing, especially on those bodies of water that we're just talking about. So I hope so. And I think it's kind of cool, man, for the fans around the country to see the different types of fishing. And hey, the other thing is too, it's good for the sponsorship for the anglers, and also for the companies that are sponsoring Major League Fishing, for example. They're getting exposure in different markets. Just like, it's great to be going from the Southeast to the Northeast to the Midwest. going out west only helps everyone. The only drag is that guys have to drive farther. But I have no sympathy, man. They're all my buds, but I got no sympathy for those guys because I do it every tournament.
Yeah.
They want to complain, but I'm not having it.
Yeah, and another thing too is it's good for the towns that you guys go into because that's external income that comes and gets pushed into the locations you guys go to, the lakes you go to, the states. It goes up the ladder. Like I could tell you when different series would come to Cayuga or they go up to St. Lawrence, I could tell you that is the talk of the state is like, oh, they're coming to fish. All the locals around there are talking about, you're gonna go out to see weigh-ins, you're gonna see different things,
Sure.
but also I can tell you firsthand, like I have friends who work like at restaurants and local mom and pop shops that are near the lake that they know are going to get use when you guys come to town. It's cool because it's the talk and it's like, well, we're going to do well this weekend because people are coming here to see these guys fish. So I think overall, you guys bring benefit in so many different ways. But also, I think it'll be awesome. I mean, I don't know what time of year is the best out west. Where east wise, it's spring or fall.
Yeah, most everywhere, but yeah.
Yeah,
I think a really good window to come here is like May, actually, before it gets crazy hot. Yep.
It would be cool to see like you'd have your eastern swing that kind of covers the like a pre-spawn and then post-spawn phase, but then also kind of give it a little break and then see a west swing where guys can regather and regroup and be refreshed to go west, so there wouldn't be like the travel complaints or anything like that.
100%.
And then you'd have a west swing. I think that would be awesome to watch.
I hope you're spot on, and I hope that happens, man. Yeah, I would say that within the next year or two. Obviously, the schedules for all the tours are out now, and it's not on there. But I would say 2021, man, there's a really good chance. And I mean, it helps put these fisheries on the map. No matter what fishery it is, it's good for the fishery in the long run. And hopefully it inspires more people to fish those bodies of water moving forward.
Yeah, and it would be cool, as an angler growing up, and obviously everybody wants to catch big bass, but watching in an MLF style to watch California flex on everybody with their
if they went to Clear Lake, it would be nasty.
Oh my gosh, that would be a tournament for the ages in my mind. Just watching the weights just stack up, score tracker, one fish for 10, like it would be just crazy. Keep them just adding up, especially with the skill that's on the trail. It would be awesome to watch. I think that would be a cool thing. I hope that's what's coming forward, especially for you guys and for fans watching. So
I totally agree. Yeah, and we didn't. So like last year, we hit some good bodies of water, but we didn't really hit any of them at the right time, and that's no one's fault. It was just we hit some bad fronts, had some bad luck with just weather and timing.
Yeah.
But this year, I mean, I'm looking at a few that. So I was like, is it possible for someone to catch 200 pounds in a day? And it didn't happen. Wheeler caught 100 once at Table Rock with a bunch of fish, but it'd be crazy to, at Lake Fork this spring, or maybe when we go up north, we hit Champlain and St. Lawrence. It'll be unreal to see the amount of meat that gets weighed on those scales. It'll be crazy.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. And one thing, I mean, that's one thing too with fishing is like, Ronnie, I just I posted a podcast this morning actually with Ronnie Moore.
Nice.
And one thing we had talked about is, you can play basketball and you'll be competing against yourself mentally and you'll be competing against other athletes. But when you're fishing, you're competing against other anglers, you're competing against yourself mentally, but you're also competing against Mother Nature. Mother Nature doesn't agree. There's not really much you can do as a human being. Like, you can compete against anglers yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly, but Mother Nature is the hardest one to beat because she's the one that affects how the fish behave the most.
You're 100% right. Yep.
It's entirely different nature of a sport, which is it can affect the trail, as like you just said. Like, if you hit it at a wrong time, it might not be a scheduling issue. It can be entirely just weather change, which it does out of nowhere. Every angler knows that, so it can completely throw off a whole tournament schedule, like tournaments getting canceled. Like I think it was last summer, I can't remember which one, but it was like a tournament that was only one day. I think it was like an open that was one day just because the wind was so bad.
From wind, yeah. And we've had so much flooding these past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
We've had more canceled tournaments than I can ever remember, just from having crazy rain and these you're planning to fish a river and it's unsafe to get out on the water. The water's up 8 feet, rushing, blowing logs down the river, and that's just stuff that it could be the best river in the country, and you got those conditions, and it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I hope this year is a little bit different and there's a little bit less wind. There's nothing I like a little wind, but there's nothing I hate more than a strong wind that it really annoys me as especially as a kayak angler.
Oh yeah, I can
it's not your
imagine.
friend. Yeah.
I believe it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But so kind of moving away from that, there was a question I was kind of curious of. If you were to pick a lake that has your number, but then a lake that you have its number where you do really well, and a lake that kind of beats you up, could you kind of put a name to both of those?
So 2 different lakes then.
Yeah, a lake that beats you up and a lake that you beat up.
Yeah, I would say for sure the lake that I've really struggled on is Ross Barnett, and that's in Mississippi. Okay. It's a really muddy, shallow water lake with just millions of stumps, and you know, I don't want to say too much bad about this lake because, you know, good fish in it, great people that live in the area. But, man, I've struggled to catch fish. I've been there 3 times, have yet to cash a check there. And I've done a lot of damage to my boats there. You know, the stumps, and that's part of my anger towards this place. The crappie fishermen over there like to mark their good crappie stumps with rebar. So they hammer rebar into the top of the stumps. And, dude, I've hit so much, you know, then the water comes up and then that rebar is submerged. So you're just idling along, and then, you know, just a big metal rod just goes right into the bottom of your boat. So I've done a lot of damage on my boat there. One year it was like my insurance claims were like, I don't know, it was like a $13,000 claim to the bottom of my boat. It was I was thankful for insurance, but nasty situation. Yeah. So that's a tough lake, man. That's a tough one for me. But I'm going to try to have it. I had the flu last time I was there. Everything bad that's happened at tournaments has happened to me at that tournament. But maybe the 4th time will be a charm when we go back. So got to keep that positive attitude. The last time I wasn't very good about that. I was like, I'm at this freaking lake again now. You know, and had a bad mindset the whole time. So I got to try to stay more positive next time. My favorite body water is up by St. Lawrence River, without a doubt, man. I've fished 4 tournaments there, done well in all 4 of them, and I just love the people up there. They're so nice. It's one of the most scenic bodies of water. Love the fish that are in there. It's got unbelievable smallmouth, and it's got a great largemouth, but the smallmouth are so good. No one even fishes for largemouth.
Yep.
And it's a style of fishing that I like to do. I mean, I love to fish clear water, so it's number 1 for me by far.
I was gonna say it's obviously home for you because that's where your Bassmaster Elite win came from, correct?
Yeah. You know, the last time I was there, and another thing. One of my best friends lives up there. He, you know, lived out here in Arizona forever, became like a brother to me, and moved back up there. So I get to see him when I go up there. It's just it's a cool spot, man. And we're going back in June, so I'm stoked about that.
I can't wait for that. That's gonna be. I'm trying to make if I'm still in New York, I'm in the job search right now, but if I'm still in New York, I would trying to make every circuit's trip to New York and
cool, man.
Try to meet some people and whatnot. But
that'd be great. We got to do some live interviews if you do that.
That's the plan. We'll see though. We'll see. I gotta see what happens with the job and down the road, but it'll be interesting.
Cool.
One of the things I don't know if you saw, but when the elites went there, and I think one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of New York was Hunter Shryock put up 21 pounds of largemouth out of St. Lawrence. So the guys are bringing bags of smallmouth. Then you see him hold up these big buckets, and
they're like,
wait, what? Like, were you fishing out there? Did you go to the right lake? Like, it was
green. Yeah.
It was pretty interesting. It just kind of shows off how good New York can be. But
amazing, man. Most of your lakes are like that. Most of your lakes, you have that choice, largemouth or smallmouth. You know, it's literally a choice that you can make.
Oh yeah, there was one of my buddies who is from Buffalo, fishes pretty much only strictly Erie. He said he was at a tournament, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. So guys are obviously weighing in smallmouth. You know, obviously all smallmouth. But one guy comes in with 24 pounds of largemouth, and in places, and people are like, where the heck are you finding these things? But obviously it's a secret honey hole because no one else knows how to find them. It's interesting. The amount of it go like we were talking about earlier, it attests to the amount of preparation and the amount of work you put in to find the fish, because that's
Sure.
the biggest
Yep.
thing. You can always trick them to bite. You just got to find them.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
interesting. And then kind of moving past that, one thing I really wanted to highlight today and bring up, which is one of the big reasons why I reached out, because I subscribed to it and I've been listening to all of them, is the new podcast that you came out with. It's the Angler's Happy Hour, correct?
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah. I wanna ask you about that because I want to hear your motivation behind starting that.
Cool. Well, so like I don't think we've been doing it quite as long as you. How many episodes is this for you? Like 30? Close to
This
30?
this will be 25 once it's uploaded.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, we're a little bit near. We've done like 11 episodes so far, but a couple things, man. One, I'm just a huge podcast listener. I love podcasts, all different types of podcasts too. I listen to some fishing podcasts, but I really like just all podcasts. I listen to a bunch of comedians, different sports podcasts. I'm a big sports guy. So, man, when you're driving from Arizona to, Lakes, you got a lot of time on the road, so that was one of them. And then it's just an excuse. Like our deal is we get technical. Like I would say, and I can't speak for you, but I think you go a little bit deeper into the techniques and really the backstory behind the anglers that you talk to. Ours is much more surface level and just fun. Like ours is more like, what the guys would be talking about around the campfire, at the bar, at dinner, at the dinner table, after fishing all day long. So it's different than a lot of other fishing podcasts out there, but it's a nice excuse to get together with your buddies like once a week and just BS about fishing,
Yeah, I think it's really entertaining because it's just kind of like a real talk, like a real conversation of you, like you mentioned, you and your buddies at the campfire prior to like a tournament. You're practicing, or you're just kind of fishing the lake and you're kind of shooting it with the buddies. But I can tell you, after watching or listening to your podcast, I don't think I'm ever going to visit Arizona the way you describe the amount of scorpions and bugs. That is my biggest pet peeve, is bugs. So I don't think I'm ever going to step foot in Arizona territory because of your podcast.
Well, that's funny, man. Well, geez, I don't know if we're doing our state much justice there, but that's pretty funny. And you're the guy that said you didn't want to go to Lake Mead after what we said about Lake Mead, right? Was that you?
Yeah.
That was...
you explained about the you could see like at fishing at night when on the walls where there's scorpions, you can see their eyes and everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going.
I hear you, man. Yeah, they'd freeze out up in upstate New York, but that's funny, man. It's I mean, you just get used to it. Hey, I don't, where I live, I don't have a ton at my house, but they're around, and I mean, hey, dude, it's worth dealing with a couple scorpions to be able to go, to go fishing in shorts in the middle of the winter sometimes. So
this is true. Yeah,
I like living out here, but yeah, man, and thanks for the shout out on that. We'll make sure to give you a shout out on ours, and it's fun to do. Like, it's just it's as fishermen, we just like to talk fishing, right? And it's a good outlet to do that. And then we do, we take 10 or 15 minutes every episode and talk about some technical stuff. And I mean, we get some different guests on. We've had Clifford Perch, Brett Height, Mark Daniels Jr., and you get guests like that. You want to make sure you pick their brain a little bit and get some tips and tidbits for the listeners. But yeah, I think you guys dig a lot deeper, and it's just cool to have different types of podcasts like that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any big plans with it coming up for 2020 or in the near future?
One thing we're trying to figure out what we'll do. We're doing one a week, and that's the plan. We're going to continue with that. Trying to decide if I want to maybe take some mics out on the road and just try to bother all my buddies during the tournaments and on our off days, just get them together and get some live interviews with them. I think it'd be fun. So I'll probably do that. That's kind of our big question right now. But right now we're literally, it's for fun. I mean, we're just trying to have fun with it and, grow our audience a little bit and just have fun. I mean, we're not doing a bunch of sponsorship stuff with it. We're just straight up having fun with it.
That would be really cool, I think, if you did, if you brought your podcast with you during the tournament scene and on your, because you guys fish a day like day 1 and then day 3 because you guys flip-flop, and your days off. That would be awesome. Have like a day off kind of group together for like a dinner, or guys having a beer or two around the fire or wherever you may be, to kind of just talk about anything, not necessarily talk about the tournament, because I'm sure you guys want to keep information that you've got to yourselves. I don't know. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
But that would be an awesome platform. I think you draw a lot of attention to that.
that's cool. And I think that's the plan. You know, a lot of what we do, it's, you know, on the podcast, it's stories. So like if something crazy happens on the trip to the tournament, that's like what our podcast is about. That's what it's about now. And, you know, man, you get all those dudes traveling around the country, stay in a nasty hotel, eat at a crazy restaurant, meet a crazy dude at a gas station or something.
Yeah.
It happens every week at every tournament. And when it's fresh in your mind like that, it'd be a fun time to do it. So yeah, hopefully we're able to do that, man. I think it'd be a blast for sure.
Yeah, because you know, added in with the MLF live, you see all the anglers out there fishing and everything. You don't really see too much of the live of what you do off water. So that would be a perfect kind of like almost behind the scenes little sense for fans. That would be.
Yeah.
I'm sure, you know, in addition with the MLF, I'm sure if when they highlight you, that could be something that, you know, they bring up that'll bring more attention to the podcast. That would be awesome. I think personally, I would nerd out about that.
That's
that
cool.
Would be,
Thank you, man. Yeah.
Of course.
That's the cool thing about podcasting, right? Like even, and it's great, you know, all the other different forms of media are great, but you know, you could do like an off the water little clip for a TV show, but it's going to be a couple minutes long. You really don't capture the whole story, but you know, me and you being able to sit here on your podcast and talk for an hour, you talk about a lot more. And, you know, same deal with that. You know, if you sit down with a guy for an hour, it goes a lot, you know, you just talk about a lot more than you normally would. And sometimes some of those little golden nuggets and funniest and best parts are buried way back in there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I enjoy it, and I'm definitely going to be one of your main subscribers moving forward. I
Likewise,
love
man.
I love it. As long as you don't bring up more scorpions, I promise I'll be loyal. But we'll see. But so how I wrap up my podcast, I have like 2 questions I love to ask because everybody's answer is always different. But before we head into that, I just wanted to allot you any time if you wanted to shout out any sponsors or social media. Obviously, your podcast is going to be linked down below. I'll send that so everybody can head over there and listen in. But if there's anybody you want to shout out at all, I'll give you the time to do so.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, man. And the best thing I'll probably say is just, you know, follow me on social media. That would be the best. That way I don't run through a list of a bunch of different sponsors. You'll see everything on there. Yep. And yeah, I fish all year long. So, you know, a lot of guys take the fall off to hunt and stuff like that. I fish all year. I try to post a lot of stuff that is stuff that people can learn from. And I'd appreciate it big time. It's Josh_Bertrand Fishing at on Instagram and Facebook. But thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Of course, yeah. And your social media links, I try to do for everybody who comes on. I'll post those down below. And when we post to our social media, you'll be tagged in there as well. So everybody listening who has a social media, you can go and click on that, and there'll be an easier link if you have spelling issues. I mean, who knows? But you can head over there and give them a follow. So
great.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we'll lead into my last 2 questions to wrap up here. This is my favorite one to ask because, again, everyone's answer is always different, and it's cool to see what people kind of think and whose childhood heroes people have. But if you were to sit down and have dinner with any 3 people, past or present, could be absolutely anyone, who would you choose?
It's a great question. And, man, I'm going to take the anglers. Well, I'm going to sit here and think about this for a second. A lot of the anglers, I've been really lucky that, man, a lot of my childhood heroes, you know, going on and starting to fish on these tours, I've been able to become friends with them. So my answers changed definitely over the years on that. But I would say I'm a huge sports fan, and I really can appreciate the diehard competitors in the different sports, the guys that have been like so absurdly competitive. And I don't know how you guys feel, probably not good about the Patriots up where you live, and around most of the country everyone hates the New England Patriots, but I'm originally from New Hampshire. Dude, they're winners, man, and I would love to just pick Tom Brady's brain and Bill Belichick's brain, and that's 2 of them right there. So I'll go with those 2, just to hear how they get the competitive edges they get. It's really amazing. And to try to think about a fisherman who's really done a lot for the sport, or maybe someone who's done a lot for the sport of fishing, it'd be kind of cool to talk to Al Linder, just because he's such a pioneer and done so much different fishing. And I know his son Troy pretty well, And Troy's such a great guy. He, spends a lot of time out west. He lives in California. It'd be really interesting to talk to him and hear some of his fishing stories from all the years.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one that I haven't gotten that, and I haven't even really heard that name in a while. But that's when you look at fishing history, it's a big name that pops up that kind of is a revolutionary. So I like that
is. And that's
a
what
lot.
I grew up reading in Fisherman magazine. Back
Yeah.
it was really in its prime when I was a kid first getting into fishing.
Yeah, definitely. And well, moving forward, I might have to delete the podcast now that you put the Patriots on here. But
I got a Patriots flag in here in the garage.
Jeez. Well, my last question, wrapping up, is quite simple, but I think it's the most meaningful, and it's an awesome way to kind of end the podcast here. But your favorite fishing memory?
I would say it's kind of it sounds like a generic answer, but just being out, as a kid with my dad, grandpa, and brother, I would literally, again, we weren't catching much during those times, but, whether we were trolling around the lake with little spoons trying to catch trout or, again, struggling to catch bass, it was, those were good times. And we'd bicker half the time, but like to have a lot of those times back then. So, yeah, sorry for kind of a generic answer, but those are the best. And then my latest fishing memory, it's really just, God, I look forward to every opportunity I get to spend on the water, especially, when you're not in the season, you're not fishing every day, you're just dying to get out. I was just out, 2 days ago and had an absolute blast, had as much fun as I did when I was fishing as a kid. So it's one of the sports, man. It's always keeps giving. That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, it beats being in a cubicle, and it's a great way. You have those memories as a kid. Now you have a family, and now you can spread that to them. That's gonna be something that they remember.
I can't wait, man.
So
that's
perfect. Love it.
Cannot wait.
Awesome. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, taking time. I know you're becoming a very busy man very soon, so I wish you the best. I'm definitely gonna be keeping up with you. We'll stay in touch, and I wish you the best moving forward.
Well, hey, thanks for the good questions, man. You're a heck of a host, and hopefully I get to wet a line with you one day up north. But appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you very much.
Of course, yeah. Anytime you're up north, give me a call, and I'll see if I can't make it out with you. I'll hook you up with some buddies who know some of the local honey holes for you.
Oh yeah, it's all good on that. I just want to go catch some big one on Keuka. Sounds good.
There you go. All right, take it easy, Josh.
See ya.